host, Scary Pops.
Everybody loves a good scary story, so let's tell you a few today. Let's get into it.
So my brother and I lived together, and we had a lease where we lived. And about after 4 years, my brother started making a little bit more money and was in a situation where he wanted to move out and kind of get into his own place. So that kind of left me having to look around and see where I might be able to go. I couldn't afford to live on my own, so I needed to find a roommate situation. So I started to look on the computer. I needed to find a cheaper place, so I searched all the way up until the last month of our lease. My brother had already moved out, so the pressure started to mount on trying to find somewhere to go. So I was frantically looking every day. With my budget, it wasn't very easy, but luckily I stumbled across a listing, and I reached out to a guy named Evan. Now, Evan was a homeowner who was renting out a room in his house, so I messaged him so I can come and check it out. Evan said he lived alone and was going to rent out the room, but I would be able to use other rooms in the house, so I decided to take the offer. So it sounded pretty good, so I tossed everything in a U-Haul and headed out, driving out towards the house. We had spoke on the phone and text, and he also sent pictures of the house, so I was able to see everything that I would be getting into. So I was excited to check everything out, and I got there around noon. I parked in the driveway and noticed the house looked small, but it looked really good from the outside. Evan was out front greeting me, waving, saying hi. So Evan gave me a tour and started to help me unload all my stuff, and I was feeling really good about this. Now, Evan was about 10 years older than me, but he seemed really nice, and I really didn't mind at all, and I was just excited to have my own room. He did seem a little shy, though, but we did manage to get everything inside. After a day of moving, it was almost 8 p.m., and I really started to get tired and wanted to go to my room. So I told Evan that I was going to be heading off to bed, and once I got to my room, I just started thinking, all in all, it was really nice, and, I was pretty happy with it. I unpacked a little bit more and got my bed all ready, and it was about almost 9 o'clock, and I was pretty much ready to hit the hay. So as I went to the door to lock it, I noticed there was no lock on the inside. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? So I was taking a look at it, and then I decided to open the door, and on the outside is the lock. I'm like, what? The outside? So I went to the living room to go ask Evan, why is the bedroom door locked from the outside? However, he looked confused and said he didn't really notice it. But he assured me that he would switch it around tomorrow. Said okay and went back to my room to go climb into bed. I wasn't too worried about it, but it was an odd find. But I just got in bed and I fell asleep. It was the middle of the night. Just then I woke up and I could hear somebody out in the kitchen. I figured it was Evan just getting some water, so I closed my eyes and decided to fall back asleep. But a minute later, I could hear him walking down the hallway. But as he passed my room, I can hear him stop right by the door. I was looking at the direction of the door, and it was pretty quiet for about 15 seconds. Then I heard a click. What? Are you serious? He locked my door. My stomach dropped, and I could just absolutely feel my face go cold. Evan then proceeded to his room, and when I heard it shut, I got up, and I went to the door to go see what was going on. I tried the handle, but it just wouldn't budge, so I stood in shock for a few minutes, like, what is going on? Why did he lock it from the outside? I mean, the reality, I just met this guy, and he locked me in the room. I was angry, so I called out for Evan, screaming, Evan, open the door! Open it! Just then, I heard Evan open his door and come closer to mine, and I could sense that he was right by the door. He paused for a few seconds before he unlocked it. I swung the door open right away and said, what the hell is that? I confronted him, and Evan was stumbling, just looking at me. So he said that he just wanted to be sure to be safe because he didn't know me. I can understand that, but locking somebody in the room is not a smart way to go about that. I told him I was going to pack up and leave in the morning, and I just stayed out in the living room on the couch the whole night waiting for morning to come. Just then, at 9 o'clock, I decided to look down the hallway just to see if Evan's door was still closed. Then I drove the U-Haul back so I could go ahead and start packing. Then I went inside and I saw that Evan's door was open. So I called out, "Evan?" So I walked over to his room and then I peeked inside. I was shocked to find that his room was pretty much empty. I was looking around the room in disbelief. So this is really weird. So I wanted to make sure that I could get to my stuff, start packing, and get out of there right away. So I powered through 2 hours, moving all the boxes that I could. I only had 2 boxes remaining. So I grabbed a box and I started to rush out, and then I noticed that Evan was right there in the doorway. I told him to move. He just stared at me, but then after a few seconds, he decided to step aside. I hurried past him and I went and put the box into the U-Haul. The last box that I had was just random food that I kept from the apartment, and so I was deciding if I wanted to go back and get it. I was going to leave it because Evan was just freaking me out. I wanted to get out of here as soon as possible, so I backed up and started closing the door. Then Evan came out with the box and he said, "You forgot this." So I stared at him and I said, "Oh, okay, thanks." So I grabbed the box and I took it from him, and then I climbed back into the truck. As I was climbing in, I could feel him watching me. Just then I turned back and he had his hand on the door. Evan was trying to close me in and he shut the door, but I kicked it open. As I pushed the door open, he fell to the ground. But then he got up, and as he was getting up, he took off. He ran off. I didn't know what to think, but I really didn't care. I was like, I'm getting out of here. So I drove off and I went to my brother's house who let me stay with him until I could find a place on my own. If I had stayed at Evan's, I don't know what would have happened. Definitely something was strange going on at that house. I'm just glad that I was able to get out of there alive. It was 12:30 in the morning and I was getting ready to go to bed, but I had to go ahead and let the dog out one more time, which is pretty routine around this time. And the dog usually likes to go out and do his business and walk around a little bit before he comes back in. So I shut the door and started to proceed to get ready for bed. But then shortly after, I hear some scratching at the door. Now this is usually how the dog would let me know that he needed to come in. So as I approached the door, I decided to look through the peephole. And when I did, I saw a man was standing on the porch with his head down, like anticipating I was going to open the door. Just then I heard him scratching. It got louder. It was the man scratching at the door, but he was scratching with a knife. He had a knife out. I didn't know what to do. I was in shock. I was helpless, but I knew my dog was out there. What was I going to do? The guy was right there at the door. I wanted to call the police, but my phone was on the charger, so it was dead. I couldn't use my phone. The man then takes the knife and he starts picking at the lock, trying to get his way in. This went on for about a minute, but then my dog noticed him and my dog started barking. I didn't have a big dog, but he had a deep voice, and when he was barking, somehow he spooked the guy, and the guy took off, luckily, and the dog came up to the porch and started scratching, and I let the dog in, and the guy didn't come back, but I packed up and I got out of there. I didn't want to be in that neighborhood anymore. I was on a road trip, but I needed to pull into a parking lot and sleep for a while, so I pulled into a Walmart parking lot. And it was really cold, so I decided to leave the heater, the engine running. Well, I nodded off, but I fall into a deep sleep, so I was out just like that. And then later on in the morning, I could hear something like whistling, rustling against the window. And I would look, and it would be like a bunch of trees going by really fast. And I realized that the car was moving. Somebody was in the car driving it. And I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do. But then I realized I had a knife nearby. So I grabbed the knife, but the guy that was in a hood driving the car, he had seen in the rearview mirror me get the knife. And all of a sudden he slammed on the brakes. He opened up the car door and he took off and he started to run. So I locked the car doors and I climbed to the front seat. My phone didn't have any service and I didn't know where I was. All I could see was trees. I was somewhere out in the middle of the forest on some sketchy road. And so I kept driving. It took me 2 hours to get back to that area. I don't know what would have happened. I don't know what the guy's intentions were, if he knew that I was in the back seat or not, or if it was some kind of abduction.